So let's talk about the processes involved in DevSecOps. So in the DoD, we're very, in the military in particular, we're very step oriented. It's like, tell me what to do, tell me when to do it, and what reports I need in order to do it, right? It's very waterfall-like type of things. And when we start looking at DevSecOps, it's sort of like, it's a set of principles. It's like, what the heck are you talking about? So this is the reason a lot of people go, when they see this, it's like, you figure it out. There's no inherent process. There's no. It's based on the complexity of the system you're trying to develop, the size of the organization. You figure it out, but follow the core sets of principles of DevSecOps. Unfortunately, in the DoD, we sort of get enamored by all the tools. It's like, oh, okay, we're going to use Jenkins. Jenkins is, or we're going to use Kubernetes, or we're going to use, these tools that are out there. They're like, yeah, here's the sanctioned set of tools, and here's the process that we're going to use, and here's the infrastructure we're going to use. It's like, yeah, let's start at the beginning. Let's try to level set people. So that's part of that we discussed last week. We talked about the people of DevSecOps. So what do we have to do to educate the workforce, at least that they're able to start to think that this is something good for us and something we can actually employ and actually be successful at doing. So that's sort of where we're at from a it's not a step-by-step process for how to do the work. You guys got to go figure that one out for yourself. So the DoD has done a little bit of this work for us. They've sort of, like, I don't think the DoD can handle this. Let's give them a set of guidelines of what it is to do DevSecOps. So we've taken this a little bit further. So as we start thinking about DevSecOps, it's really about a process. How do we deal with this archaic process that we have and look for opportunities to modernize? So that's really where our cultural shift and our thinking sort of has to change. And this automate thing, I think I may have mentioned to you in 2005 when I was at NAVWAR, then called SPAWAR, Admiral Brady, Rear Admiral Brady basically came up with this: we need to automated test and automated retest. Automate. And so they started, leadership was trying to change the culture, but if one person, just because you're a two-star admiral, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be able to change the culture, right? As soon as you're gone, everybody's like, whew, thank God, whatever that was he was talking about, I don't know. But automate, we now have the capabilities to automate within the software factory. We can automate the mundane processes. We can automate better than what the human can do as far as continuous testing and continuous integration. All this automation is the power of the commercial marketplace. This is what they've developed. They understand you can deliver secure software faster than the manual method. So that's sort of what they're talking about here. Empower the people and hold them accountable, let them make the decisions. And this sort of goes into that psychological safety thing that basically reappears in this, is you have to empower people, but you got to make sure that your processes and your culture enables people to actually make hard decisions and to take risk and to experiment and fail. We got a large problem. I perceive a large problem based on how we deal with contractors that do this work. I mentioned, how do we normally evaluate a contractor's performance? Anybody know a defense contractor's performance when they're on contract?
The project milestones.
Project milestones. So you're like, if you don't hit the milestones, what do we do to the contractor?
Reassess.
Reassess. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Yeah, everybody else in the classroom should probably go on mute. Yeah, be my, that way you don't sound like you're in it. Yeah, not really. Not really. How do we, so we got a contractor. We say, we want you to build this awesome software, this awesome capability. What type of contract do we normally use in development?
Is it cost plus?
Cost plus incentive, right? Cost plus award fee, right? Those are the two common ones, right? Best effort. Those are best effort contracts. A fixed price is a whole different ball game, right? It was like, I'm going to give you a gob of money. It's on you. You deliver when I say, and then I'll judge that what you actually deliver me. So from a development perspective, fixed price is shifting more of the risk to the contractor, and you're probably going to pay for risk costs anyway twice. So cost plus is usually where we're going, or where we've been with this type of development. So the incentive in a cost plus contract is based on what? What's the incentive in cost plus?
Meeting milestones and delivering above the minimum requirements.
No. Were you in my class, Matthew?
Yes, sir.
What the hell? I'm going back. Let me write you down. Gosh darn it.
Just trying to move along, sir.
All right. Hey, your psychological safety here, right? I'm not gonna chastise you out in class and call you out. I'll talk to you in private. Anyone else that want to take a shot at it? Cost plus incentive fee.
So you mean for the contractor or for
Yeah, for the
end
contractor.
user? There really isn't
No.
any. I mean, they can
There's
keep going on.
There's an incentive for the contractor to perform. What's the incentive based on? Cost plus incentive. Cost is the incentive. All right. Cost plus incentive fee means we are incentivizing them to control cost, not to build awesome software, not to build capability fast. The reason I'm bringing this up is our contracting strategies need to shift to a DevSecOps environment strategy, and people are struggling with that, right? I'm not saying that this is, I have ideas and people have talked about it, and we're actually employing some of these ideas, and it ain't cost plus incentive. So, and let me put the way back dial on you folks here. So cost plus incentive basically says, what do we think the cost is going to be? That's the target. Okay, the contractor agrees, the government agrees, so that's the target. If you can come in less than that, your profit increases up to a certain point. So if you can do it more efficiently, save us money, we're going to share the benefits, and you get more profit. Okay, well, that sounds like a pretty good incentive. The other end of that line and is if you go over cost, then you get less profit up to a minimum perspective. So we're incentivizing them to control cost. They're very resistant to change, right? If you change something, then the cost may change, and we need to go renegotiate this. You see how this is even though we say it's best effort, we always have to remember we negotiated a target cost. And if we say, well, why don't you add this, why don't you add that? And they're like, we're more than willing to do that as long as you change the target cost of the program. And then you go into negotiations and stuff. Is that lean? Is that fast? Lewis? No, right. No, it isn't. It isn't fast. It isn't agile. It isn't any of that stuff. But that's what we've used forever. So I'm going to give you some ideas in the class, not today. But we got to do something different, and we got to sort of do all the stuff that DevSecOps tells us to do. So one of our big problems in this whole process of getting everybody aligned is our contracting organization. They're going to do what we say, by the way, right? If we're the program manager and we're the milestone decision authority, the contracting officers are going to do what we say. We just have to make sure they're empowered to actually do this by regulations and stuff, and they are. Okay. I don't know why we were talking about that, but anyway, if I want to empower the contractor to do stuff and I want to have this psychological safety, I can't continue to swack them on their incentive fee, on their profit. I got to do something different. So that's sort of where we're at. And especially as we start talking about focus on collaboration, a lot of that in DevSecOps is the teams collaborating within the process. The development team collaborating with the security teams, collaborating with the operations team, themselves collaborating with each other. So collaboration and having the ability to communicate with each other is one of the core principles. If we do this traditional, well, we're the government and we're going to evaluate you and how you're performing and stuff, and we're not collaborating, the government and the contractor is not collaborating and sharing information and having this transparency, then this ain't going to work for us very well. So we got to do things differently with the contractor and our infrastructure and how we're going to do this. So as we start looking at, well, what are the processes we need to sort of think about in the DevSecOps? They start introducing these terms of a lightweight process, a process that is automated, that you can understand the value chain from left to right, from the time that you get the requirement to you actually deliver the working software to the user. That there's a high degree of automation in there that allows us to actually flow and get to the user in a timely fashion. That's sort of what they're talking about. Trustful software, right? This is I trust the software that comes out of the software factory through DevSecOps is secure. It is what it was supposed to do. It doesn't have any vulnerabilities in it, right? This is the things that they're talking about. How do we do that? How do we measure performance within the software factory, right? We are fascinated and fixated on measurements in the DoD. We have to make sure that measurements are used in a constructive way, that we're learning from things. If we start using these as evaluation of profit, then we're probably going to kill it. So we got to be very careful when we set up these processes, that we understand that we want the contractor to be successful. We want them to continue to learn and continue to improve. And we're going to measure some things, and we're going to have to report some things out to SecNav. We're going to have to report stuff out to DoD if we're following these processes, and we need to be able to measure these. And we need to know what good looks like. What does it look like when you first start, what the measurements are? And if you're having process improvements and stuff, you should see the measurements be more favorable. When you have some unfavorable measurements, you need to learn from them, not punish from them. So that's that psychological safety stuff. I know it's weird coming out of my mouth, but that's sort of where we need to go. Ownership and accountability. If we're going to empower people, there's an ownership involved in this. And we need to hold folks accountable for the stuff that they're actually delivering. So, hey, if you deliver a piece of software and it has a vulnerability in it, you're accountable for that, and we need to go and evaluate potentially what it is and learn from this. What happened during the process that allowed us to do this? But we need to hold folks and that way, there's the ownership part of it. Go ahead, Adam.
Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
So I think right there with the psychological safety, this is where the fine line is, to where it's like, we're not trying to punish the truth, but at the same time, maybe it's the approach instead of calling somebody out, right? I'm just trying to figure out, because I know there's a fine line to psychological safety and holding somebody accountable, because it's almost like a slippery slope, I guess, if you will.
If accountability is also punishment, I think that's where you sort of cliff off, right? If you empower people and you give them ownership of the process and they are accountable for the process, then that encourages them to make better decisions, right? If I'm not accountable for it, I was like, well, I don't care. That security stuff is your problem, or if it didn't work, not my problem, right? It's like I'm just getting paid to code. But if you shift if you shift the teams to be accountable and they own the process, and if something fails, then they need to learn from it. It's not I don't think it's a punishment action. It's more of a, what can we learn from that and not let it happen again? But you got to hold the team accountable for it. It's not and I agree with you. It's like, okay, is this, what are we going to do? Are we going to pull their ability to do authority to operate, to make these decisions because they're bad actors or whatever? It's like, that's, yes, I agree. And we got to work that out from our, it's all about how do we motivate, how do we control, and how do we make sure that we actually get good software and secure software to the user. So yeah, that's going to be challenging. Transparent. There should be no hidden processes. Everything should be very clear to people where the software is, as far as its development activity, how it's going through the process, what security measures that we're employing. All this stuff should be transparent, both to the contractor developing it, the government with the oversight part of it, and the operators and the users trusting that they're getting what a secure capability as they possibly can. This is empowering, sort of connects back to the ownership part of it, but getting folks to feel empowered that they can make decisions, to do better, to do the right thing, to make decisions faster. You can empower people, and we've done this in the military for a long time, right? We're like, okay, operational commander, you got it, buddy. From the Navy, a ship captain basically is empowered to make good decisions on the ship. He doesn't have to go ask the Commodore or someone else, is it okay if I do this? We're empowering them, and this is sort of what we're talking about also, the teams. Psychological safety, we've discussed this, and a culture of learning. All of these processes in DevSecOps, they're sort of interrelated. They're really talking about the teams. They're talking about the users. They're talking about the developers. They're talking about the security people. If we can all work together, we can communicate, we can collaborate, we can empower, we can basically set up a culture that provides the psychological safety of people that we understand that we're here to learn, and we're going to make some mistakes. We're going to get it wrong. It's okay to get it wrong, as long as we learn something from it and we don't kill somebody. That's sort of my opinion. But that's sort of where we're going with this process thing. They say, hey, process is really a scale thing. The larger organizations, the more advanced processes need to align all the components and parts. I would say that the DoD is a larger organization, and we need basically the advanced processes and strategies in order to get ourselves aligned, and we're all doing it the same way in the DoD. Early on, the DoD was sort of absent in all of this, right? They were sort of watching, the Air Force sort of tackle some of this stuff, and ultimately they came up with a framework in which they are going to do stuff. So you've seen this slide before, and this is the enterprise DevSecOps strategy guide that basically says this is how we're going to do DevSecOps from a DoD enterprise as a large organization, and this is the stuff that they're now talking about process. How do we do this? How do we make this happen? And so there's other guidebooks that are out there, like I mentioned before, and hopefully they continue to evolve this to where people can just pick up something and say, okay, what is it that we need to be doing? Let's sort of shift gears and talk about change management. change management in this perspective is not the culture of change. It's the change management of the thing that we're delivering. If you start thinking about, it's like, okay, I'm going to deliver some initial capability to the user. Let's just go back to DoD 5000.87, the adaptive acquisition framework operations of the software pathway. Man, that was a long sentence. Let's go back to that document that basically says, hey, we need the user to come up with a capability need statement that's been vetted through the sponsor and the owners of this stuff, right? They agree, hey, we need something. And the acquisition community basically says, okay, you got money, you got a capability need statement, a draft or whatever. Let's get started on the planning. Let's just get started doing something based on a decision from the decision authority, the acquisition decision authority. That's sort of how it happens as we describe the process. And so we have a certain amount of time that we're trying to figure out our contracting strategy, our security strategy, our what it is we're going to do. All these things have to sort of line up, and then somebody ultimately gives us money. And they say, okay, there you go. So they give us sufficient amount of money to get to a minimum viable product. Remember this? This should be, we talked about this early on, week 1. So I got a certain amount of time, I get to a minimum viable product. This is all pre-negotiated with the user, right? They're like, hey, okay, we think if this is the minimum viable product, and this demonstrates that you can actually do this development, and sort of there you go. And then we say, and we're going to continue to add value. We're going to continue to add features. We may change stuff, right? We may see a feature is not working well. We may pull it back and redeploy that feature with some sort of change. How do we manage change in that type of environment that basically enables us to provide the security that this software, this new software or revision of some sort of capability, that it's secure and it's agile, that is able to go through this process fairly fast. They don't have to wait, 10 cycles in order to get it, or 2 or 3, 4 years to get it. Okay, so that's what we're talking about, is from making sure that we have a change management process that basically ensures that it's secure software, it's the speed at which we want, and the software is stable, right? That's that quality part of it, right? And the circles of delivering capability, secure, quality software, as defect free as it possibly can be. So how do we do all that? How do we do it today? Anybody know? How do we manage change, giving the capability to the user in the DoD? Go ahead, Lewis.
It's iteratively through revised contracts.
Yeah, from a monolithic, I'm going to deliver new capability to the warfighter. We do that through some sort of contract negotiation with the contractor, and we sort of do it that way. Yeah, pretty slow and ugly. Anybody heard of an ATO? Authorization to operate. Risk management framework. This is the change management process that we have. And we're going to talk about that today a little bit, right? We've chatted about RMF. RMF is our risk management framework, is our change management tool. Sort of how it goes. All right. In the old days, change management was pretty draconian. It was ugly to get through the process. It was slow. It was painful. It is painful to get changes into the hands of the user. The capability changes and all this is still ugly. It's still a manual process. everything is treated like, whoa, you changed something, so we need to go reevaluate everything. Make sure you didn't goon anything up, right? That is the gate process that we have today. And we gotta pivot. So this is that whole cultural thing and our processes thing. We need to change the ATO process, authorization to operate process, to be sort of transparent to some degree. So this is a process that we need to sort of think about. How can we get capability from development to the users and not have major roadblocks based on risk, right? And so this is the whole process of the adaptive acquisition, the adaptive change management process is sort of the introduction to this. And it basically says, hey, I can improve velocity, the speed at which I get capability to the user, and I can have a process that enables speed and stability, the quality of the program, of the software I'm delivering, implementing a lightweight and scalable and agile process. I can do this. I have the technology, it's been done before. So let's figure out what's in our way. What keeps us from doing that today, and what processes do we need to change? And so it all comes down to risk. What is the, we have the stuff that we have out there today, and I want to change it. What risk am I inducing into this? What's the risk that the software may have a vulnerability? What's the risk that this is a major change and this could have consequences if it fails, it has bad quality and stuff, right? So we can't treat all changes the same. Not all changes have the same degree of risk, right? Anybody watch these people jump off a cliff with this wingsuit? Now that's a different level of risk, isn't it? You're just hoping that when I jump off this thing, that everything, all my equipment is going to do what it's supposed to do, and I'm not going to get some sort of draft that pushes me up against the rocks. I've done figured this out, that I have enough airspeed and enough distance from those rocks that I'm not going to hit them, right? I mean, that's a high degree of risk. You would imagine it's like, well, okay, I can put a parachute on it, and if it looks really bad, I can do that. So this is all the degrees of risk that we sort of have to think about. And software is really not much different. If I can sort of say the risk is minimal, that my process is pretty sound. I was looking at the dogs looking out the window, what they're looking at. If I can sort of have some sort of faith that this change is minimal, it's sort of in the noise, then I ought to be able to let it go out without anybody touching it manually. I need to focus on the high risk items and making sure that I'm able to mitigate and I understand exactly what it is we're doing. Let's spend our time up here. Let's not spend our time at something that is administrative or whatever we determine what the risk is. If we don't do this, then everything becomes a high risk item and the process will grind to a halt. Okay, that's what we're trying to describe here in our risk management framework. And basically, if we have this friction between the people that authorize us to deliver the software to the user, then it's really just going to it's like, why should we go fast if we're going to go slow here? So this is that lean process, this leaning out the entire process that everybody understands what it is we're doing and have authority get in line and basically hit the I believe button to some degree. So if I'm making a change to software, if I'm adding capability, if this is what I'm doing, I need to look at all this stuff and I need to determine, what degree of risk am I inducing into the software, and maybe I need to stop if it's a high risk item. If I need to, let's evaluate this, let's do manual. So we're not saying deliver everything without a person looking at it, or having us to look at it from a team perspective. I'm not saying that, and they're not saying it here. They're saying let's have a process that basically looks at risk, and we assign a number to it. Let's figure out a process if everybody agrees that if this is a major change in capability or features or functions, that the major stuff gets looked at and the other stuff, it just automatically, we can push it out, a minor change. Okay, you guys tracking with that? So he basically says, let's do some sort of calculation. Let's have some sort of risk determination and figure out what it is. Remember when we did acquisition risk management, we basically looked at likelihood and consequences, and we did some sort of assignment. We said likelihood was based on a probability that we were going to have some sort of event happen, and the consequences was based on some sort of cost, schedule, performance thing. So we had things that we could say, yeah, it's a likelihood of 3 and a consequence of 3. And that put us right in that yellow area when we did acquisition risk management. Okay, that's what they're talking about, doing something like that. So approval and oversight levels, this is that process discussion of how do we dynamically adjust this whole process given a certain amount of risk of the change. How do we make a decision that we can deliver continuously to the user because it's a low risk event, it's not going to cause a lot of problems, and then we can adjust the release times based on this according to risk level. So if it's a major change, a major rework in capability, a new something, and we consider this to be higher risk, then okay, piece. Let's make sure we put that in the plan. It's like, this is a high risk item. Let's make sure that we have time in there that we're able to do the manual look at this and make sure all of our folks are into this. So that was really the advent of risk management framework. Right? This was sort of the, hey, if we're gonna go faster, if we're gonna be agile, if we're gonna do ultimately DevSecOps, then we need to understand change and the risk of change and how we manage change. So this probably would have been, instead of calling it risk management framework, it should have been change management framework. You know, if we could go and change the words a little bit, but okay, let's call it risk management framework. It is what it is. I'm going to show you a couple slides that describe the risk management framework, and I just lifted this from the GSA, their government organization also. So there's some sort of prepare step. You know, we sort of have to align ourselves to the change. So let's just not call it risk management, let's call it change management, just for sake. So first thing that we need to do is understand the system that we're working on. We need to categorize, and here we're talking information system because that's sort of what this is based on. And we're going to need this for weapon systems at some point and combat systems at some point, right? Those aren't IS systems, those are something else. But this is our initial stab at it. So categorize if this is a low, moderate, or high security impact type of system. Hey, if it's a low, you know, hey, if you lose this information, if somebody's able to get into your system, no big deal, right? No national security, everybody's still going to get paid, all that other stuff. So we don't do a lot of low impact systems in the military, but you know, we sort of categorize it. It's like, hey, if this is the pay system, and if somebody got in the pay system and people don't get paid, then people aren't happy in the military and the government, right? So we just got to figure out and categorize with the system. So that's almost like you know, you do this once, you sort of got this step. Next one is select a step. Select and document the security controls necessary to protect the system, right? It's sort of that, you know, the vectors that we talked about last week, the cybersecurity stuff. What is it that we need to implement to protect the system? Is it zero trust? Is it a we're going to talk about other ways to protect the system, but let's figure out those controls. Let's select it and document it, and what type of controls are necessary in order to protect the system. Third step is to implement. Actually do it. You know, we documented what we're going to do, how we're going to protect it. Now go do it based on your plan. Okay. And then let's assess. Let's do the red teams. Let's do the tabletop exercises. Let's do all this other stuff. Let's assess how secure our software is based on the level, and basically produce a security assessment report after we do all of this. So we assess it, and then we go into the fifth step, which is authorize. That I'm actually authorizing official determines whether or not to grant the authorization to operate. Someone basically says, I think you did everything you possibly could. I agree with all this stuff, and I'm going to authorize you to field this capability. So authorize is the final step in the RMF process. It's basically, it's the authorizing official is not a contractor, right? It's a government employee for whatever organization is doing this. It's a deliberate process, and you can see that this could be sort of time consuming, and you can see this could be sort of slow if I have to do this for everything. And so, you know, we start looking at, well, all right, if I know this, and I know this, how I'm actually going to document all the security measures I'm doing, and I'm actually in the software factory in DevSecOps, I'm actually implementing all the security controls I said I was going to do. The assess step could be automated, right? This all could be automated to this point. And now it's about the risk of, if it's a low risk of causing problems or whatever, maybe I allow it to go out without having the ATO person to stop and look at this, right? This is that whole thing that we were talking about, approval and oversight levels. That's what we're just talking about. So this is what we are doing in the DoD. Just another view of this. It just talks more about, you know, go from the right, go all the way around, and then monitor. You know, they start saying, hey, all right, I can get the ATO and everything, but how am I going to monitor and make sure the software that I'm delivering is actually performing and doesn't actually have any vulnerabilities and is not being exploited? So that's the other end of the DevSecOps thing that we start talking about, is I'm going to give them the software, but how do I actually monitor it and have it call home telemetry and all that other stuff? Here's a view, another view of it. I mean, you can't get enough views. Here's step one: categorize the system. Blah 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 blah. A lot of documents in there. You know, register this system. Blah blah blah. So you can see as it goes through here, you know, this process that we have. It looks very arduous. It looks very slow, and we need to sort of fix that. Here's the recommendations on how to fix this whole process. Step one is a manual process, right? Takes people. You're going to have to figure out what the system actually is. You probably do it once and you're done. Okay, I think that's. I apologize for this being blurry, but this is what it looked like in the document that I lifted this out of. So, okay, manual, fine, we're good with that. Once you do it, you're one and done, probably, unless you change the system itself, like the category of the system. Select the security controls. It's like, oh, okay, what security are we actually going to implement? We're going to do the NIST 8000 or whatever controls. We're going to do all this other stuff. This is what the software factory is going to do. In DevSecOps, we're going to determine what type of security, do it once. That's what we're going to implement. Okay. Now automate. So once we have trust and we know that this is a low risk, a low category type of change, then let's just automate this all the way through. That once you can agree we're not changing step 1 and 2, then you have continuous delivery. So when the capability is ready from the developer, it actually gets pushed to the operational folks and they're able to use it. That's how you do speed to capability. That's how you do, 24-hour, 48-hour delivery. You can't do it manually. You got to do an automated process. There is some degree of risk. It is what it is. But this is our change management process. This is how folks see us at some point in the future being able to. Right now, this is all manual. So we got to be able to change this. Okay, you guys tracking with this? All right. It's interesting when we think about risk and if you get people that are in the ATO process and they think every change that we make has some degree of risk. Well, you're right. Congratulations. We will never deliver perfect software. We will never deliver perfectly secure software. So every system has inherent risk associated with it. Okay, so let's just get over that. The program manager is graded against our KPPs, our key performance parameters, and compliance with all the regulations and stuff. So we have this like, there's risk out there. Every system has it. I'm basically being judged and evaluated by how well I do from a cost, schedule, performance perspective, right? It's like, ooh, these start looking a little bit, weird. When I look at traditional acquisition, how I'm being judged, I'm making trades in program management, right? I still have the program management stuff we got to do, right? Whether we're doing DevSecOps or waterfall, I still have to make trades based on cost, schedule, and performance, quality, functionality, whatever things that I have to trade. With each trade, there's some sort of residual risk that occurs. We know this is basic program management stuff. This is things we have to do. Someone in the organization is going to have to accept all the residual risk for the system prior to placing it into operations, right? That's the ATO process we have for IS systems. If it's a weapon system like the Aegis weapons combat system, a weapon system, they own the network, they own the system. They are basically accepting all residual risk when they start fielding new capabilities to the Aegis platform, as they make not just the refactoring part of it, that is what it is, but as they're looking to add new features and new capabilities at the tactical edge, this is all applying to them. They own the entire system. When we start talking about IS systems, this is like putting something on NMCI for the Navy. Right, to put it onto that network, if you want to put an application there, you got to go through their ATO process. If you want to go through the Air Force One, there's the same deal. Somebody else owns the network. You're just delivering capability, and that's sort of here. If you own from head to tail, then it becomes a little bit clearer whose responsibility it is. Authorizing official, we've talked about this person. They're responsible for accepting the information security risk, which is done through the RMF process. Okay, sort of making sense here, right? If I have a program manager, the user wants this capability. I have to get it onto a network, information system network in particularly, and I don't own that network. I'm going to have to go through this AO process, authorization officer process. And I have to convince them that my entire DevSecOps process, my entire thing that I'm trying to do is secure. I have to convince them that I'm able to deliver capability without them stopping it. Okay. In the DoD, traditionally, an ATO is good for 3 years if you don't change it. It's like, okay, here, that capability there, all right, they may go reassess it after 3 years based on what's going on in the cyber domain and making sure that we're still implementing the same processes. So this is the way we do it today. If we want to change the thing that already had the ATO, ultimately the authorizing officer has to reassess and making sure that we're delivering good capability. And this is the reason we sort of get stopped, right? If I was like, hey, this is a low risk change. All I'm doing is updating this capability. We're doing the same practices that we did before. I got to get this AO that owns the network to agree that my software processes and my software factory is doing the best it can and allow us to deliver this almost with automated. Okay, so that's what we're talking about. This is a big deal. So what is the AO looking at? So granting an ATO, it sort of goes along this path. So this is if you would think about the initial capability. I come up with a plan of action and milestones. How am I going to secure the software, or what implementation I'm going to do, blah, blah, blah. I come up with an authorization package. I sort of put all this together for them. And the authorization officer basically is going to do a final risk determination and risk acceptance, right? Have you done everything you possibly can do? So let's think initial capability. All right, fine. I get an ATO. That's sort of how it goes. And I get a authorization decision. And now I want to add new capability. Do I have to go through this process again? Yeah, I'm going to change something that isn't performing well. Do I have to go through this thing again? So this is the process. That is another process that we have to worry about. And we got to bring these people. We got to more shift left here. We have to bring them in, show them what we're delivering and all the automation and all the processes that we're employing, all the security things, to where they can hit the I believe button. So when it comes from, Matthew Morris Software Factory, they believe that we can basically, if it's a low risk item, that we can go ahead and deploy this stuff without going through another ATO. That makes sense? We ain't there. This is another cultural thing. This is another someone outside of our chain that we have to sort of convince that this is the process that we need to do. Okay, so I'm just telling you that this is the thing that we have to do. A little bit more about the plan of action and milestones. This basically says it's everything that we're going to do to protect the software. So that seems pretty evident. Okay, I've been talking for a good amount of time here. Let's take a break to the top of the hour. And we'll come back. So if you start thinking about like Navy networks, if you like NMCI, we're going to develop this application for NMCI, and we're basically on task for this, and we do all that. Another service wants to use that application. It's like, okay, Air Force network or Army network. Unfortunately, cross ATOs is something we want. It's like, okay, the Navy has the authorizing officer has authorized this through an ATO to operate on NMCI, but the Army says, well, wait, we're the Army and we do things differently here. They're shortcake. I'm not accepting it. You got to go through this entire process again and prove to me that your application is secure enough and has less, the risk is understood enough to where it'll run on the Army network. That seems broke. That's unfortunately the process that we have. Just because I developed this and it runs on an Air Force network doesn't basically allow the Navy ATO AO to grant based on that. Seems silly. We should have basically the same type of processes. It is what it is. It has the same category of risk. The network is basically the similar. So that is another thing that we have to work on from a process perspective. But just to let you know that we got process all over. We just can't get out of our way. So let's get back to DevSecOps. So the key tenet of DevSecOps is continuous integration, continuous delivery or development, however you want to sort of call the D part of it. And it really is set up for small incremental releases to the user. So ultimately, we're going to deliver capability, minimum viable capability release, right? That's sort of our process. But we're going to continuously give them small features, small chunks, small capability. So that's what DevSecOps is really set up to do. So if you look at Agile, it's like, okay, well, Agile is a process that has user involvement at the end of the sprint. If we're doing Scrum, it's a process to where they work on features. They're sort of collaborating. Developers are collaborating with each other. All this good practices, Scrum Master, stand-ups, and all this stuff. But it's really about just developing the software. It's like, okay, now I'll give you that feature. Well, how do you do that? How do you actually deploy the feature? How do you actually do all the other things? So that's the reason Agile is a development process, and DevSecOps covered the entire process. So yes, developers use Agile, incremental, whatever you want to do, that it's able to do that. But ultimately, what we're talking about is how do I deploy automation? How do I connect to the user? How do I basically make sure that the developers understand the security part of this, that they're getting trained, and we have collaboration between the security people and the developers and the operators. So that's sort of what we're talking about, and the next level. I may have mentioned to you, I think last week, I said, you can't go from waterfall to DevSecOps. It isn't a one-piece move. You gotta go, if you want to be successful, you got to go from a waterfall methodology to an agile process thought, and then DevSecOps. Is just, I mean, can you do it? You know, has it been tried? Sure. If you want to be successful and you're using waterfall and you think you need to change, your first step is how do I actually change the development process, and then we'll get the rest of this. But let's just assume that we're here, and we're going to talk about continuous integration, continuous deployment of capabilities. This infers that I'm able to deliver it to the user without really slowing down much through the ATO process, okay? Or if I do have to slow down, I understand why. They start talking about this concept of A/B deployments. Let's give this software to a select small group of people and make sure it works like it's supposed to before I give it to everybody. That sort of seems prudent, doesn't it? You know, that I'm going to give a small subset of users, and basically this lowers my risk of a given change, right? It's like, okay, so I'm just going to give it to these people, and let's watch them before I give it to everybody. And if there is a problem, I can quickly get it back. Okay, makes sense. So they're talking about risk in the DevSecOps. Low risk changes should be fully automated, and testing using continuous integration, continuous deployment or delivery. And I ought to be able to release this without manual intervention. Okay, it's sort of connected to the RMF process, sort of connected to the ATO process, and how do we work through that? But that's what the vision is, and the concept of DevSecOps is, if you're not doing CI/CD and you're not doing AB type of deployment, and you're not getting continuous authorization to deliver this, then you're probably not doing DevSecOps. You're probably doing something else. Okay. High risk changes may require coordination with multiple teams, right? This is like, let's stop. You know, this is a high risk change. It could affect things. Let's make sure we do a deliberate look at this, and it may be highly manual. That's okay. And receive review from a lot of different people before we can release this stuff. Okay, I'm perfectly fine with that, as long as we use we basically say risk is different, and in the high risk stuff, sure, let's do the due diligence on this. But the low risk stuff, then let's go ahead and believe our process. Is that making sense to you folks? How this is sort of laid out? Matthew, makes sense to you? Everybody in the classroom, they're like, yay.
Yes, sir.
All right. So there's some process things that we're going to work through, and making sure. So that's why DoD and them setting the standards and them telling us it's okay to do this type of stuff, that we're able to go back and leverage what the boss is saying that we should be doing, go do that. Automate wherever possible. Automate is a key feature of DevSecOps. Automate is not having someone do it manually, not having a person in the loop. It is the tools themselves, the process themselves are automated to do the security scans, to making sure that we are meeting all the standards that we're supposed to be following. Have an automated tool that looks continuously at security and basically flag it out. Automated compliance basically alleviates the need for manual testing, and we're going to collect the evidence through an automated feature, right? So this is sort of the the cultural shift, as we say. We're going to go faster because we're going to be able to automate the process. We're going to shift security left. We're going to make sure that we're looking at every element as it's being built, it's being flagged. If there's something through the automated process, and it stops there until they fix it, right? That's what we're talking about. It's like, all right, so if I fundamentally understand the process as I go through here, we got to basically understand when we start this process, it's going to be a lot of learning, both in the government and the contracting organization, the defense contractor, right? We all sort of have to be in this mode of continuous learning. Okay, we learned something from this. We deployed this piece of software and the quality wasn't where it needed to be. Let's learn something from this rather than blame and or signing corrective action. We're really good at that. It's like, all right, the corrective action is sort of our thing, and blame is sort of our thing in the government. And so we need to sort of change our culture to where we're more in a learning type of environment. So if something does happen and we were unable to do what we said we're going to do, we need to have the blameless post-mortem. We need to have the open kimono type of discussion. And we need to basically do this in a way that fosters this creative culture that we're trying to do, to allow them to do continuous experimentation, taking risk and learning from failure. We got to do this. We cannot get into this I'm going to blame you and I'm going to punish you and I'm going to give you corrective action so you don't do this again, right? That's so this is, when we start talking about this to traditional program managers and stuff, they're like, okay, what's my tools? What tools do I have in order to make sure that the contractor is doing the right thing? If I don't blame them and I don't give them corrective action, that's my job. It's like, no, we as a team have to work together, and we have to basically follow the same processes. We gotta make sure that if we are trying to establish a culture that is able to do high performance levels, we got to sort of make our shift to this. So this is a whole training thing for us in the government, maybe not so much from the contractor. We say our process adds a lot of security features to it, we're delivering secure software. We're following the standards that have been published by NIST, the Naval Institute for whatever standards is for cybersecurity, right? We're doing all this stuff. Ultimately, we're going to have to look at our software and a different process of looking at our software. We're going to have the tools, fine, yeah, fine. But let's let the teams think about, from a team perspective, let's have a exercise in which we build collaboration, we build awareness of security processes and stuff. So we're basically making sure that we're stressing security, and security is not the job of one person, it's the job of the team. And that way all the team members become involved in the best practices for security. So tabletop exercise is one that was brought up in the book. And it's not an attack, it's a simulation that is a serial. It basically says we start thinking about this. We virtually simulate a cyber attack and the responses. And so we describe it. We said, we're going to do this. We're going to do a denial of service attack on the software. Okay. And then basically the team basically participates in how we're going to prevent a denial of service, or how we're going to prevent this vector of attack. So this is really what they're doing. They're basically saying, did we design this correctly? Is it able to respond to this? So tabletop exercises is one way to do it. That's fine. And then we can actually do the attack simulation, the red, blue, green, red, blue, purple. And we're familiar. Hopefully, you've heard about this, about the red team basically trying to break in and act as the adversary, the blue team trying to defend the system, the network, whatever it is they're trying to do, and the purple team basically doing the coordination and the monitoring of it. Right? That's we do this in the military. We understand this, but this is a learning approach, right? This is you did everything you thought you could possibly do, and now the red team goes in with all the tools that a attacker would have, and be able to see if there's any weaknesses. So this is all being done within the DevSecOps environment, right? So if we're talking about a high risk release, let's make sure that we've done everything we possibly can do to make this a regular and repeated process. Chaos engineering. The way that we would test systems in the past, in the DoD and particularly, was like, does it operate as intended? Is it suitable and effective? There you go. Nobody would ever go and say, well, let me unplug this and see what happens to your system, right? They wouldn't inject deficiencies intentionally in order to test resilience. They're like, no, this was the design and way it was going to work, and it should work like that, and that's just how we're going to do. And during operational testing, they do not induce intentionally some sort of error, like I'm going to unplug this server and see what happens. Right? We don't do that. We can learn a lot from chaos engineering, and it really is. It's important to learn. And basically, as you go and inject chaos engineering by intentionally injecting some sort of failure into it that you can observe and see what happens to your system. Was there a discussion in the book about Netflix and how they do chaos engineering? Yeah, I found that very interesting. I was an early adopter of Netflix. Anybody know what Netflix was when they first started their business? What were they actually built to do?
Mailing DVDs.
Who was their competition?
Blockbuster.
Blockbuster, right? You went to a store, you got, back, it was when we shifted from VHS tape to DVDs, that opened up a new window of competition, right? Now it's pretty hard to mail a big tape thing. It's heavy, but it's pretty easy to basically mail something in a little folder and send it to somebody. Yeah, that was their business model. And then a lot of technology evolved to where you're able to do compression of video, and they said, hey, if I can compress video and the quality is pretty good, I probably can take advantage of the internet, the bandwidth that people is getting in their homes. Yeah, okay. So they did this from scratch. Nobody was doing streaming video back in the day. And so they established this. It was a monolith, and basically they were having some challenges in scaling. That's one problem with a monolith is so what I would do is I would log in to my account. So it would the monolith would have to come all the way up. So the monolith contained both the authentication, it contained all the movies that are available to stream. I made the selection. It actually had to stream it, but it was all one application that did that. Very heavyweight, very inefficient, and every time you scale a monolith up, it takes resources from the network, from their servers and all their racks. To ultimately at 8 o'clock p.m., I'm sitting down, I want to watch a movie. I hit here and here's that spinning thing. Spin, spin, spin. It's just like waiting for something. My wife is like, what the hell is this? Our internet must suck. I said, no, our internet ain't sucking. They suck. Right? Because it would always happen as the monolith had kept on replicating itself. It just basically caused such a challenge in their infrastructure that they couldn't do everything. Okay, that's what it was. And so they basically changed their philosophy, and they changed their software to a containerized service type of stuff. Those just use containers. And so basically it said we're gonna split our monolith into discrete parts, and when somebody needs to authenticate themselves that they actually paid for this, we're going to call up an application that's called the authenticator. And every time that somebody's trying to authenticate themselves, we just call up that little piece, and it connects back to the database stuff, right? It says, did you pay? Are you still an authorized user? That's what it would do. Boom, 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 boom. All right, pretty lightweight, not affecting streaming services or anything else. And then they would call, once they authenticate, that authenticate container would call into the availability container. What movies are available? So it would call that container up, it passed on the information, you're authorized, and that new container would come up. And it says, here's all the movies you can select. Okay, I'm enjoying myself, I'm looking, and I was like, I want that movie. I click that button. That container passed to the streaming service for that movie. It basically said, boom, there you go. They've authenticated themselves. Here's the movie they want. Now call up this streaming container. So they broke it all apart. Awesome. Awesome. They're like high-fiving, yeah, we solved this problem. And they're like, well, what happens if one of these servers go down, or one of this, we lose something? What are we going to actually do? How resilient is our system? So that's where they sort of injected this chaos engineering into it and says, well, what if we did unplug this? What if they were unable to get to this? What else could we possibly do in order to get through that? So it really was a ability to reduce latency, to basically increase the resiliency of the system. So that's sort of where they were going with this. And it's like, and we live in an environment in the military to where we do resiliency. We call it redundancy, right? We say, hey, if this is a really critical system, maybe I need to have another version of this software running on a different system that I can be redundant. And that's a form of that. But what if I unplug this? What if I do that? And I think that's really sort of where they're going, to basically understand how the system reacts during adversity and how resilient it is to recover. So that's sort of the take on the chaos engineering. Yeah, I hear you. My dog's looking at outside out the window. It's like, come on, let me in. Failure is inevitable. You'd rather prepare for it. You'd rather see what happens when it happens. What can you do? What happens when it happens? Happens when you have the adversity, and what type of actions your system can do automatically, and how it can recover itself. So this is sort of the power of DevSecOps. If we start testing differently, if we start designing differently, we can actually start looking at this as it goes through. So I think chaos engineering is a good thing to think about. So today we talked a lot of processes, things that we need to work out in the DoD in order to make DevSecOps work, and impediments that are in our way. This is what's happening in the DoD now. Like I said, this is the ink is still wet on this. There's smudge marks all over the place. We're still deciding what is the best processes, and what type of authorities that we need to sort of grant to people in order to make this stuff work. Any questions about anything that I talked about today?